on our communities. I don't know if you guys remember, but we did talk to a man named Joel Leonard, and he was in charge of the Berry 2020 project that sparked a lot of interest in America and had a lot of different people contributing. So today we have Emily Burk, who is speaking on behalf of a student that contributed to the time capsule. And we're going to talk to her a little bit more about the whole process of it, what went on behind the scenes, and maybe she can give you guys some advice if you're looking to make your own. So I will bring Emily on right now, and here we go. Hey, Emily, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, my pleasure.
So, for the people who are listening to us, they don't all know what Joel did. So, give us an overview on the Berry 2020 project so we can all be caught up to speed.
Okay. Well, Joel, he's a leader in the makerspace world, and I run a high school makerspace. So I'm a part of all of those makerspace social media outlets, pages, and groups and whatnot. And so I connected with Joel through Nation of Makers Facebook page, and he had posted a Berry 2020 challenge, and he was trying to just get as many maker spaces involved to make a time capsule, as a makerspace challenge. And he just offered it to Nation of Makers, and there's a lot of different, states and even countries, just all around the world that accepted the challenge. And my makerspace that I run at a high school in Anna, Texas, which is about 50
Oh, wow.
miles north of Dallas, we accepted the challenge, and I just put a promo out to all the students and in the high school that I work in, and then I had some students that accepted the challenge, and one really just dived in.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, what exactly is the makerspace? Just give us a little bit of a background, some context.
Makerspace is a location in a school or a library. Sometimes they just exist in their own buildings or facilities, and they contain resources or tools, materials, things like that. A lot of times they're donated, sometimes they're purchased, but might be like a saw or 3D printer or a sewing machine. So equipment like that's accessible for patrons or people to come in and use.
Yeah.
And so in the makerspace that I run here in our high school, locally here, it is a place. It reminds me of a library.
Yeah.
It's accessible, but except for books and literacy, it's maker literacies and equipment safety literacies. And we just have a ton of resources and tools for students and teachers to come into our makerspace, to explore making different projects and design thinking, the design process. Students or teachers are interested, they can come down here to the makerspace and dive into making their projects.
Cool. So it's very super hands-on for students.
Extremely hands-on. It can be crafty. It can have something to do with maybe a project that they're designing for engineering, in CAD. It could be something they're sewing. Yeah, it's very hands-on and just a lot of design that goes into it.
Awesome. And the student that was really excited about it and heavily contributed, how old was he? It seemed like he was very involved.
Yes. Okay. So his name's Colton Huggins, and he gave me permission to say that. Last year he is a sophomore, and he's very involved in our makerspace club here at the school. So he likes to come down to the makerspace and just explore the different tools and equipment
Yeah.
and design softwares. And he's a junior now, and so he's involved in for his classes. His pathway is more towards the engineering pathway, and so he's taken some of those classes where he's learned CAD.
Oh, wow.
And so Inventor and Fusion 360, And so he wanted to explore, how he could make a time capsule.
Yeah.
I think when Joel put out the story of, kind of the purpose, the time capsule project, Berry 2020, we had all been through
Yeah.
so much in our world with COVID. It was such a crazy year. And in Texas down here, we were already back in school
Oh
at
wow.
that time. So at that time, it was a year ago, I guess,
Yeah.
almost a year to be exact. Um, we as teachers and educators, and also our high school students, we had been back in school in person, wearing masks,
Uh,
not able to see each other's faces, and learning in a weird sort of way that was definitely not normal. And so I tried to offer some activities, as safely as I could and in a sanitary way. Um, just opportunities. My goal was to offer opportunities for students to come down here and get hands on, because there had been so much the previous year. There had been so much that was online, and, they were learning online remotely. And I just wanted them to get back to using their hands to make something,
yeah.
and to interact, interpersonal skills and whatnot. So this project, Berry 2020, was a great way to get students down in the makerspace. It offered an opportunity for students to come down to, you know, Berry 2020,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and so it turned into, like, okay, so Colton, he's a sophomore. He's in sophomore English last year. So he even told his English teacher about it. And the English teacher, Mrs. Christine Wood, she got her sophomore English classes involved,
Oh, wow.
and they wrote letters and, public service announcements, um, that were able, just to put into the capsule digitally, because we made it. It was a small time capsule, and I have a prototype of it. I have
Oh,
some prototypes because he went through a lot of prototypes, but
cool.
it was a pretty small time capsule. This was a prototype of it, and let me see if I can get in the camera there. There you go. And so anyway, so the his English classes, they were writing letters to people in the future.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask you, what did you guys put into it?
Yeah, so Colton was able to get his teacher involved, and then she got all of the sophomore English classes involved, and they wrote, like, they made little, like, PSA folded, I guess, pamphlets
Hmm.
that said Berry 2020 on it, and just tips and also facts and things that society was dealing with during this time. Research, how to do credible research and whatnot.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they really got into it. The students were really able to, I guess, express in a teenager sort of way
Uh,
their perspective of how they were feeling, and
yeah.
what they were noticing about society, and are just able to give tips to people in the future. Like, if you go through a pandemic, then this is what you want to do, and this is what you don't want to do. This is
The
what
do's
we've
and
done.
don'ts of COVID, right? And
Exactly.
was it would you say more professional for, people in the future, or was it also personal? Did Colton write anything about himself, a letter to future him or things like that?
There were some narratives that were in there that, of expressing their. Some of the classes wrote narratives, so they were expressing how they felt during the time. But then there were also, in the PSAs, they were more professional. So there was also a professional quality of just like, this is the research that we've done, this is what we've noticed, in media, and and this is what we recommend. So there's a little mix of both.
Yeah.
Because
And
I think it was important to get that student perspective, their voices involved in, and how they were feeling. Because that's another thing that I think, went away for a little while that now we're dealing with,
yeah.
was just people being able to express themselves to one another and just write how they really felt, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, especially during such a stressful time. And it's interesting. Was there a limit on how many things that you could put into it? How big was the actual time capsule?
Well, this is actually the size of the time capsule. So
Oh,
it's a very small time capsule. And the actual time capsule, it has this is like I said, this is a prototype,
right.
but it had an iris top on it,
Wow.
and it opens. And so I don't know if I can do this because this is just a prototype of it. And we locked that away. So anyway, but it had like a little iris
Oh, so
mechanism
you
on it.
get into it.
Yeah, when you like twist it, it opens up.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So because we couldn't fit all of the narratives
Right.
in, we just scanned them in digitally and put them on a flash drive.
Okay.
So yeah, and then there was like a little pillow that he made to put in it
Oh,
as well. This is a prototype of it. So
yeah.
it was like, it was like purple inside, and then there was a little pillow for the flash drive. And then because it was made in Anna ISD Makerspace, we
Oh,
also
yeah.
3D printed our logo.
Oh, I love that.
So that also went in it because it was made here, and there was like a little explanation of where it was made and why it was made and how we got involved in it. And so it was really cool because through the process of making the time capsule, I saw this student that, he had studied in engineering class. He had studied CAD design and Fusion 360 and Inventor. And he had studied the design thinking process that you learn as an engineering student,
Yeah.
um, or even an architectural student. And there was one moment when he was making this time capsule that he got really frustrated because he had designed everything, all the dimensions and everything. And I have like little pieces of the initial prototypes because
Oh,
he
wow.
designed it and 3D printed
Wow.
different versions to kind of test the iris mechanism out.
Yeah.
So like this was like an original version and it was 3D printed. So this was like one of the prototypes. And so just to kind of test the mechanism out,
Yeah.
and he designed that in Fusion 360. Then, and I don't have the regular piece, but I just have the iris. Then he was like, okay, that works this way. And then he went to a second stage of it, and then made it bigger and fixed something. He had fixed some things on the larger version of the 3D printed version.
Mhm.
And then, as he was working through that process, he's like, well, maybe we should maybe it shouldn't be 3D printed. Like maybe it's something that we want to go use the laser on. And I think he
Right.
had aspirations of maybe taking it, making it out of metal because we also have a plasma cutter. So, but then he decided to go the laser route. So then after he designed it in CAD to actually 3D print the prototype,
Yeah.
went over to the laser engraver and got into Corel Draw, which is an Adobe software. I mean, it's like
Wow.
Adobe. It's like a graphic design software,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so then he took the 3D print file, the STL, and he converted it so that he could transfer it into Corel Draw so he could work with the laser engraver. And at some point during that process, he was very, he was like, he came to me and I was just letting him do it. And I was just observing this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there was some training here and there, but I was just observing it. And he's like, at one point, he's like, Mrs. Burke, I can't figure this out. So we talked it out, of how to transfer that file into CorelDRAW. And we talked it out. And he's like, I don't know, I'm about to give up, and I
Oh,
was like, no, don't give up. And gosh, he stayed for like 2 or 3 hours after school one day,
just
just
doing
after
the
school, just trying
wow.
to figure this out. Yeah, wanted to get this time capsule done and just figure it out. And so we finally had a breakthrough moment after troubleshooting, several options,
Right.
and got it going. And then, with this particular prototype, I think this was like this particular prototype, he noticed, actually there might have been one more before this one too. um but like he noticed there was just some uneven parts, like it didn't fit, the lid
Oh,
didn't fit all the way on it. And so then he had to make some more adjustments. So I mean, gosh, I think it was like number 4 or 5 maybe, that he got it right. And then I remember having the conversation after, about it. And he was like, Mrs. Burke, this is what, like when we're sitting in engineering class, we learn about the design thinking process.
yeah.
And he's like, it didn't really come to me that that this is what it was. It's on a
Yeah.
poster in the room. It's on the poster, but he's like, until you make something with purpose, something that you have a passion for, or something that, you really want to get done, that you're interested in, you don't get it.
Right.
And he's like, I'm really thankful for this makerspace and for this opportunity to have been able to just to be able to explore and design and work through that process. Because the makerspace offers a time for people that want to be engineers or designers to really explore those. And so this time capsule project was just perfect for a student like Colton.
Yeah.
And then the fact that we got our English classes involved was fantastic, because then they were able to express through writing,
Right. Which is
you know
good. Reflection
yeah,
after here. Yeah.
for sure.
Well, I mean, that's amazing that he was able to push through and do so many kind of rough drafts or prototypes.
Mhm.
What did he land on at the end? What was the time capsule made of, material wise?
It was made out of wood because that was the only thing that we could use in our laser engraver. And at that time, it's the only material that we had. So we decided not to bury it. We decided to lock it up in a museum
Oh, what?
style, sort of on display. So it's like to be
Oh,
open
that was
in
my next question.
10
Perfect.
years and 10 years. So, after a decade has passed. So
Okay.
it's not allowed to be open. And so that's kind of where we ended, because we know that the materials, after the research and
Right.
even collaboration with Joel and other groups, the materials that you use and you bury it. I mean, it's science. There's a lot of science in that,
There is. Yeah. Yeah. I was
So,
curious to see if the wood had gone underground because I knew the wood
oh
just
yeah.
hold up as well as people may assume. So it's great that you guys did it kind of exactly. Where did you place it in a
Just
museum style?
it's like in a display that's
Oh,
kind of, yeah, it's in a display in the hallway. So,
yeah. That's great to hear also because so many time capsules get lost because
mhm.
people just put them underground. They don't remember where exactly they did, so they're digging all around. They can't even find it. So
Yeah.
that's a great way to ensure that it doesn't get lost. Have you had a lot of media interest? Have you told people just because it will be 10 years down the line when it is ready to be open?
Yeah, we had our local media in our city of Anna, the newspaper. Well, it's kind of the surrounding cities and towns, because we're kind of small and we have small towns around us.
Yeah.
So it's a Tribune that is featured for several towns. And Anna used to be, not long ago, was a town, but we're really growing into a city now.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
yes. So we're really growing, lots of growth here. And so our local media newspaper, our local journalist did a story on Colton and his time capsule project. So, and that the last part of it, I guess, is okay, so the time capsule was due in December. And I
Right.
can't remember. I think it was December 19th or
Right before
maybe,
Christmas.
or no, maybe it was right. Maybe it was, I can't remember if it was after, it might have been after Christmas, but it was like the turn of the year. I think that's what it was,
Right.
the turn of the year. So Joel had set up this collaborative Zoom of all participants
Yeah.
that participated in the time capsule project. So we had people in there from, just all over the United States and
Right.
all over the world. I can't remember. I think there was someone in from India, and I
Wow.
mean, it's just, yeah, they were, somewhere over there. And so it was really cool. Colton, like, we were on break for
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and just came back up to the makerspace, and I sent Colton the Zoom link, and I told his mom so she would know.
Yeah.
um, you know, and so he said that he wanted to join in on it, and so he got to join in on that Zoom, and we both got to hear all of the other time capsule experiences. And so
Right.
people had made just different time capsules of different things. I mean, some just took existing, maybe like a mason jar, like a
Right.
pickle jar or
Yeah.
something, and then put, notes from kids. I think there was a group like that had a group of kids that put
Yeah.
their notes of what their experiences were. So we learned lessons, like, what are the lessons we learned? And they
Right.
put that in there. And gosh, I don't even know. Joel had several
Yeah.
several examples, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it
Yeah.
was great.
Creative. What was like your biggest takeaway from this whole experience? It sounded like you and Colton worked very closely together, and you were definitely, a great structure for him, mentor. So what was the biggest takeaway from this project?
Huh? I guess it was the reflection piece, with a time capsule. Like I said, we've all been through a lot, and we each have our stories, and I think it's so important that we take time to reflect on, what's happening, what's happened on the
Yeah.
past, so we can take those lessons and move forward. And I think that, making something during the process, it really makes it hit home. Like, when you are thinking about your past experience, and then you're making something to kind of represent that.
Right.
I think, through making something hands-on, it becomes personal. and
Mm.
and as you're making it, I think you can reflect on it as well. And then also, it's almost like, we had to persevere. We've had to persevere through this time of COVID, and 2020 was rough, and we had to persevere. And I think it was cool to see the student actually mimic that in the design and the making of the time capsule. Like,
Right.
he had to persevere through those obstacles. So it was like juxtaposed,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
That's
through
cool.
the time capsule project. It was juxtaposed. It was like, this represents our year.
Right.
So
And a
yeah.
lot of people use time capsules, obviously, for history. Do you think, in your personal opinion, that it was useful for preserving that history that you guys experienced together, and obviously as the whole world experienced?
100% for sure. Yeah, I think 2020, Barry 2020 project. It was just such a great idea.
Yeah.
Um because and just for the people of the past, which is the present right now, but someday they will be the past.
Yeah.
And just to have a teenage perspective, a younger perspective of, these are the lessons that we learned, and we hope that you take these lessons and take them to heart and use them, so that if you experience something like this, that, you know, you maybe can learn from us. And
Yeah.
I think it's personal too. Like in a time capsule, it's personal because it's written, and it's made by someone and it's written, it's personal. Whereas like in a history, maybe in a history book,
Right.
a history class, you don't always get that personal, I guess, narrative
Yeah.
reflection.
Hmm.
So it's like, I don't know, it's like journaling. Like I'm big on journaling too,
Yeah. Too.
just paper,
Hmm.
pencil to paper, pen to paper journaling. I think it's just something so like something that's physical,
Hmm.
that's not just digital, but even like, I mean, like I said, we had to put them, images, but
Right.
it's images of them that were handwritten. Everything was handwritten. Nothing was typed. It was like handwritten,
Yeah.
and the pictures were drawn. So,
Oh, really? Oh, I love that.
mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that Yeah, I think time capsules are great too because the primary sources that create them. Like you're learning right through, you're learning right about what these children experience through their writing and through their illustrations. And I think as, a 20 something young adult going through this too, my first thought was, how are kids coping and how are high schoolers coping? Because these are your formative years and you are in school and it's supposed to be a completely different experience. And I really watched these kids kind of walk out of school with their masks and then suddenly, everyone's virtual. And it was a lot to really take in and understand how they could be mentally doing well, physically, hanging in there. Kids were a huge concern for a lot of people. So it's a really interesting concept that he's done. And I think a high school voice is invaluable. And when understanding the pandemic and how we've all kind of, hopefully we're at the end, who knows, but it's a
Who
really
knows?
different perspective to capture. And I'm excited to, maybe when it's being open 10 years down the line, they look into it, they write a book about, all these kids and what they felt, because this is such a important topic that I don't think got enough light in like the news coverage, in my opinion, at least.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be a great thing in 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, for sure.
And what he's
Um,
doing in 10 years as opposed to what he did in, doing this prototype and doing this time capsule, I bet his skills are going to just skyrocket. He seems
I'm
really.
telling you. Yeah, I'm telling you, like this kid is amazing, and he's actually we added a makerspace opportunity, a makerspace class opportunity, so
Wow.
that that project led gave him the confidence that he could persevere through this hard part of the design process, like just making things fit together for the time capsule itself. Um, Gave him the confidence to take risks to learn other equipment, and now he's leading in a makerspace class, and he's actually working for me as
Oh,
a
wow.
makerspace student staff member, so he helps train other teachers and other students in the class
Wow.
on the equipment that he used to make this time capsule. So
Yeah.
it really just led into, a whole new role for him. And so, he can really just take all of that information and do something amazing in life,
Yeah. So
out of
many
high school.
transferable skills. And I know a lot of people, when they talk about creating the time capsules, their biggest piece of advice is to plan, like diligently plan. So I'm sure that's what he did as well. Is there any other advice you can think of that he learned at the end where he turned to you and said, wow, I didn't know it was going to be like this, or next time I would do this differently?
Um, I well, I think it may have just been the design software, because he was actually putting you know he didn't really know some of that software,
Oh, really?
so he knew
Learn
some
from.
of it. Yeah, he knew some of it from class, and he just
Yeah.
took it kind of to another level. But then when he started getting into Corel Draw, and there was even a point where he took it into another software, into a software called vCarve, which is for CNC routing. And he took it in there, playing around with the file, and then took it back into Corel Draw.
Wow.
And there's just so many, I think, I think it's just to persevere, like keep troubleshooting if you don't
Right.
know something. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, after, because he was like, I remember at the end, he was like, Mrs. Burke, like almost just quit, and he didn't let me quit, and we just kept troubleshooting. I'm so glad that I, stuck it out and got it done. So through the making of the time capsule, yeah, for sure planning. And I mean the planning, the design of it.
Mm,
But if you're using design softwares that you don't know, or
right.
you have to explore and take some risks in some design softwares that you lack those skills in, just look it up online and research and keep persevering, because you'll probably be able to figure out, troubleshoot, figure out your way through it.
Yeah.
So, and that's what he did. So I think for sure that's what he would recommend. Just keep persevering. Don't give up on it. Make it what you want it to be, what you planned for it to look like. Because he definitely had a plan in
Yeah.
mind. Now his plan changed
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 times, but sometimes that's what it takes when you're working through making a product.
Right. And
Mhm.
did he tell you why he chose 10 years? Just we're always fascinated by the opening dates.
I think I don't know. I think it's just a decade,
Yeah.
where will we be
And
in
that's
10
kind of
years?
my
And he
next
just
question. Too.
he wanted to put it like in a little museum
Yeah.
part, kind of like just to display it. So we actually will probably move it, because right now it's in this little glass area in the storage room, kind of in our gallery area, but eventually he does have a goal
Okay.
to relocate it, not to open it, but relocate it so that it's more in a visible
Hmm.
part of the building, so that when people walk by they see it. And so that's the plan. It's just that she hasn't gotten the materials to make the actual, because he has something else that he wants to make to
Oh,
relocate it.
showcase it.
It's like a casing, like a
Yeah.
museum casing. Like, kind of like, I think he wants to design and make something that looks like a pillar. He'll probably be doing this next semester. Like, he hasn't had a chance to do it this semester, but next semester in the spring, he has a goal to actually make kind of like what you see in a museum, um, that has the plexiglass
Yeah.
square on it.
Yeah.
And then he wants to laser engrave kind of a caption of, this is a very 2020, very 2020 time capsule designed and made by Colton Huggins. Um, and then artifacts within time capsule made by Mrs. Christine Wood's English classes from 2020. So that is his goal, to relocate it. And I think it's a great goal, because he spent a lot of time, and I think it's very meaningful, and I think it should be out there that this was made by this Anna high school student in the makerspace during 2020, and this is to be opened in 2030.
Yeah.
So
No, I love that. I definitely think it's worth doing. On one of my podcasts prior, I had someone at college in Detroit. They made a time capsule and they did the exact same thing with the casing, just so it's
mhm.
insight. No one forgets about it, and then the opening date is more so celebrated. You're not like, oh yeah, that time capsule, but
Yeah,
it's on minds.
I think it's important. Like, it's like, because you could have the option of burying it,
Hmm.
where it could be found by anyone or someone, but then Joel said the other option would be to kind of display it
Right.
somewhere. Well, we want it to be, I think Colton wants it to be displayed, in a more visible place.
Yeah.
So not only is it displaying this meaningful project, but it's also displaying this was made here in this high school makerspace,
Yeah.
by high school students. And it's a project that, that he's proud of, that we're proud of,
Yeah.
in the makerspace.
And
So
what do you think the future will be like in 2030 when we're opening this time capsule? I always ask everyone that question and it always throws them off, but it's really interesting because we are living through history and obviously Colton understands that. I mean, you guys did a whole project based around what we're living through. So let's think about, what will it be like on the opening date in 2030?
That is so hard to think about. So hard to think about, but I don't know. I've just had conversations with family members and
Right,
friends, like what if scenarios
right.
of what, in 10 years, what if there's another pandemic? And maybe that anxiety is there, for all
Oh,
of us. I don't
for
know.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there going to be another pandemic? Well, if so, then maybe with this time capsule opening, maybe it'll really benefit people.
Maybe
I
it'll be
don't
useful.
Yeah, maybe, and I hopefully not, but gosh, we didn't ever think this would happen, but it did.
Exactly.
So, or maybe we will have healed and moved past it, and maybe we're in a more normal situation, and then if when those people open it, they're like,
What?
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was really happening. I mean, it says it in our history, we're talking about it in history class.
Wow.
We're hearing from it, we're hearsay through our teachers or parents or whatever. But these students were our age at this time, and this is what they were dealing with. This is how they felt. So hopefully maybe there's some empathy that comes out of it. I don't know.
Yes, collaboration. No, totally. I
Yeah.
always ask that. I'm very fascinated just through what we're going through, how we're going to come out on the other side. 10 years, it's not that far away, so you kind of think about the day-to-day what we're living through and how that will, hit us in 10 years. And then
Yeah.
also the technology of time capsules. So even you talking to me about what Colton's using. I remember in high school I didn't have anything like this. There was no room for me to go. I mean, I want to buy a sewing machine now and finally get into it. So it's really cool that you guys have a space for kids to experiment with these various pieces of equipment that are really expensive and not easy to kind of for the average person to get. So what do you think, in 10 years from now or in 20, 30, the future of time capsules would be like?
Oh, wow.
Harder question.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. It's probably going to be super easy to 3D print one, a complete one. I mean, with certain 3D printers, you could already do that. We don't have those here in our
Yeah,
makerspace, but probably you could easily do that. And maybe in 10 years, those more expensive machines will be more accessible to just kind of the normal population, And like
yeah,
we've got 5 or 6 3D printers out there, and I mean, we can make some pretty cool stuff. And I know
yeah,
that not all schools and areas have access to that. So we're very lucky to have that here. But we're hoping that this type of learning and this type of maker space, maker education, and access to tools like this, I mean, it's my goal and my hope that maybe, through sharing projects like this and stories like this, and through sharing experiences that occur and great and awesome experiences that occur for students in this makerspace, that more schools in, in our world will add maker spaces like this for students,
yeah.
because it's not very available. Like, this type of learning is not very available to all types of schools, especially in public schools. Like,
Right.
we are maybe one of the only public schools that have a space like this in the state of Texas.
Wow.
So this is the largest comprehensive public school makerspace in the state of Texas. And
Awesome.
so, I mean, there are smaller maker spaces, but my hopes that is that, maybe through opportunities like this time capsule project and student experience, that other schools will be able to add this type of technology and these types of skills that are really future ready, I think, for students, because they're really going to set students up when they leave high school. They could go out and design and start their own companies and, develop entrepreneurs. I already have students they have their own company. They're seniors in high school this
Wow.
year. They already have their own
Really?
businesses. Yes, and they're selling, and those are, those are the students that come here in the makerspace, and they're exploring and they're designing, they're using the equipment. And I mean, with Colton, to be specific,
Yeah.
he's at the minute he came into the class, he came in and said, "Hey, we can make stuff to sell in this makerspace." And he created an entire business workflow, and
Wow.
he's got it all coded and connected to a website he made, and Slack notifications when project orders come in. And he did that within, the first 2 months of being in here this year.
Wow.
So, because, he realized, I think, through the time capsule project, we could make some serious cool projects to
Yeah.
sell and make revenue.
Yeah.
So, if we could just, in 10 years, hopefully there's a maker space in every school, and we have more opportunities available for students, and the equipment is just even better, because maybe we're developing the next innovative designers,
Right.
as
Right.
this generation's learning how to use this technology. They're looking at this technology and saying, what can I make better?
Right.
So in 10 years, it may be like super easy to make a time capsule.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Well, this has been really cool. Thank you so much. Is there any like advice or last pieces of, advice you want to give to maybe a teacher who's interested in making one with her class, or even a student that's listening? Because I know this can be an overwhelming project for some.
I would just say, like, just taking it through that design process, really getting your ideas out maybe on paper first, sketching, being very, very detailed and specific with dimensions, and also looking at your materials so you know what you have going into it prior to just jumping in and making something. I would say, sketching it, working through the design thinking process. You can't really empathize with your user, but doing the research of where you're going to put it, where it's going to be located, the shifting of the ground that
Yeah.
happens in that area, the weather. There's a lot of research that could be done, and you could really dive into science, science skills and objectives that you study in science class, to really kind of dig into that. No pun intended. Dig into that. Anyway, so and then just taking it, just be prepared to work through maybe several prototypes
Right.
before you bury it. So
Yeah.
have plenty of materials, scrap extra material, just in case.
Just in case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you guys so much. If anyone's listening, you've heard it first. Persevere, plan it out, get specific, and do your research. Thank you so much for joining me, for teaching me about, Colton's story. It's been really phenomenal to hear all about the Bury 2020 participants, and even cooler that it's done by a sophomore in high school, because all those coding things, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm sitting here like, yeah, totally. I
Yeah.
know Python. I know like HTML. Like that's
Nice. Yeah.
literally it. So these kids are just remarkable, and I'm so excited to see what happens in the future, what he accomplishes, and what you guys do with that time capsule once you do open it in 2030.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye,
All
Emily.
right. Bye.
Okay, guys, another great guest from Texas. I literally sat here as it just kept getting darker and darker. So, no, I'm not just a floating head. I'm wearing a black turtleneck. So, just had to let you know. But thank you so much for joining in. Great episode. Love to hear about what kids are doing. This Colton actually built his own time capsule. So, we were talking a lot about the dimensions and the materials that went into it. Again, thanks so much for joining. We will be here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll